Picture a traditional Chinese pagoda, curved tile roofs, carved wooden screens, a garden courtyard built on the aesthetics of the Tang Dynasty. Then, from the top of that very structure, you hear the Islamic call to prayer. Or picture a fleet of massive 15th century wooden treasure ships crossing the Indian Ocean. The commander of this armada, the most revered naval admiral in Chinese history, is on the top deck, facing Mecca, praying. When most of us think of Islam, we map it onto a very specific geography. We picture the Middle East. We think of Arab culture, desert landscapes, and a religion geographically bounded by the borders of its original empires. But inside the modern borders of China, there are roughly 26 million practicing Muslims, and they haven't recently arrived. Their community has maintained an unbroken presence there for 1,400 years. Over 14 centuries, these believers underwent a continuous process of cultural fusion, developing a faith that is uniquely and native to China. The historical record points back to 651 CE, less than 20 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. Envoys sent by the Third Caliphate arrived at the gates of Chang'an, the imperial capital of the Tang Dynasty. They presented themselves to Emperor Gaozong. Instead of treating this new belief system as a threat to his authority, the emperor listened to their teachings, deemed them highly compatible with the ethics of Confucius, and personally ordered the construction of a mosque in his capital. But while diplomats opened the door, merchants built the house. Arab and Persian traders had been navigating the overland and maritime routes of the Silk Road for generations, and they brought their newfound faith with them. This map highlights how these trading networks extended across Asia and anchored directly into major Chinese cities. The Tang Dynasty maintained a highly cosmopolitan policy, permitting these foreign merchants to establish their own self-governing enclaves, complete with mosques and community judges, right inside designated quarters of the metropolis. Over the decades, these transient traders began putting down roots, intermarrying with local Chinese women. They raised children who grew up completely bilingual in both language and culture. This multi-generational fusion rooted the Muslim presence in the soil, transforming a community of merchant travelers into a permanent indigenous population. In the 13th century, the Mongol conquest of China violently upended the old social order, placing the new Yuan dynasty in power and completely inverting the traditional ethnic hierarchy. To manage their massive new empire, the Mongols required literate, globally connected administrators. They classified Muslims from Central Asia and the Middle East as Semu, placing them above the native Chinese population and installing them as provincial governors and financial officers. But in 1368, the native Ming Dynasty reclaimed power. The Ming implemented strict isolationist policies, suddenly severing the diplomatic and commercial arteries that connected Chinese Muslims to the broader Islamic world. Cut off from outside influence, the community adapted to survive. They adopted the Chinese surname Ma in place of Muhammad. They abandoned spoken Arabic for daily life, instead writing highly sophisticated Islamic theology in classical Chinese. The ultimate climax of this cultural synthesis was a boy born to a Hui Muslim family in Yunnan province who would grow up to become Admiral Zheng He. Decades before Columbus crossed the Atlantic, Zheng He commanded a fleet of 250 massive ships and 27,000 men. He projected Ming imperial power across the Indian Ocean to the shores of East Africa, while simultaneously ensuring his crews had halal provisions and building mosques in the foreign ports he visited. By the height of the Ming Dynasty, this synthesis had matured to the point that the empire's most celebrated heroes, men like Zheng He, were the direct product of a deeply rooted Chinese Islamic identity. This deep integration was violently tested under the Manchu-led Qing dynasty. Facing severe state discrimination, economic exploitation, and forced assimilation, northwestern Muslim communities launched massive resistance movements, like the Dungan and Panthay rebellions, resulting in millions of casualties. Yet these devastating conflicts were fought by people who no longer saw any dividing line between their faith and their homeland. They were fighting for their survival as a people who were undeniably Chinese and unmistakably Muslim. That identity endured the crucible. Today, across modern China, you will easily find the ancient term Qingzhen, meaning pure and true, designating halal food and Islamic institutions. You can see this living continuity walking through the vibrant streets of the Muslim quarter in Xi'an, where the cuisine, the craftsmanship, and the community have maintained a daily rhythm for over 1,000 years. Right at the center of that neighborhood stands the Great Mosque of Xi'an. Its foundations were laid in the 8th century, and its courtyards have hosted Friday prayers through the rise and fall of empires, surviving straight into the modern era. 14 continuous centuries of history dispel the myth that Islam is confined to a single geography or a single cultural expression. It proves that Islam operates as a universal framework, capable of taking root, adapting entirely to a vastly different superpower, and flourishing without ever losing its core truth.